It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. In this video we're going to be talking about the crossover character being revealed, who's going to be crossing over from The Walking Dead to Fear the Walking Dead. So if you watched Talking Dead last night after the latest episode of The Walking Dead Season 8, it was revealed who the crossover character is going to be. So the crossover character is going to be Morgan Jones, who is played by Lenny James. So Morgan is basically going to be crossing over in one way, shape, or form from the Walking Dead universe to Fear the Walking Dead universe, which is obviously in the same universe, but it takes place before where we are in the Walking Dead's timeline right now, and it's at an entirely different location. It's on the West Coast, and the Walking Dead's original show is on the East Coast. Now right off the bat, I'm shocked by this announcement. It never crossed my mind that Morgan was going to be this crossover character, and I'm genuinely surprised about this announcement. Now I would have predicted Madison being the crossover character over Morgan being the crossover character. Now for those of you that don't know, a very popular theory about this crossover was that Madison is going to be this crossover character, and that this crossover would basically connect to another storyline from the comics. It's basically a storyline that takes place right after the All-Out War storyline from the comics, which is where we are in the TV show right now. For comic readers, you know exactly which storyline I'm talking about. So that was one of the most popular theories in terms of fan theories go. But if I was going to make a prediction, I would have predicted Madison over Morgan, despite how much I hate that theory and idea that this crossover is going to involve that arc from the comics. And not only that, I just hate the idea that Madison and the group are going to become those group of people from the comics. So this definitely came as a shock to me. One thing I want to mention before I move on, so a couple weeks ago I did this cool little edit where we had Morgan and Daniel Salazar basically in one scene together killing a couple people. And I basically took scenes from Morgan killing those saviors from the first half of season 8 and Daniel Salazar killing those group of people from the Dam community in the second half of season 3 of Fear the Walking Dead. And I basically merged those two together. Now, after I posted that video edit, someone commented saying that maybe I knew a little bit of information that other people didn't know about regarding this crossover, and whether I had knowledge that others didn't have. And that was just not the case. I made that video edit as a fun little thing. I never even knew that Morgan would actually be considered in this crossover. It was just something that I saw common in both shows, and I thought that was very interesting. So it wasn't that I knew some information that others didn't know. So this was just a fun little fact for you guys. But coming back to this crossover character being revealed, like I said, I'm definitely surprised about the route that they ended up going. I have no idea how they're gonna make this work in terms of the logistics of it, because it seems like he's going to be introduced in the first half of season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead. So timeline wise, he's going to be in Fear the Walking Dead's timeline before he makes his return in the Walking Dead timeline. So he kind of left in the Walking Dead and came back. So this is going to be somewhere in between there, where he left and he got back into the Walking Dead's timeline. So it's gotta be somewhere around there. But in terms of exactly how they're gonna apply it and make this crossover work, I just have no idea. Because in terms of where these two kind of match up, season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead is starting, and at this time, in terms of the original Walking Dead show, we have seen basically most of season 1 and maybe even a bit of season 2. And Morgan Jones himself was in season 1 of The Walking Dead. So it's kind of tricky thinking about where he's gonna fit in terms of the time of Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead being matched up together. So I have no idea whether this crossover is going to take place before Rick and Morgan meet, or is it going to be during that time period that I discussed, where we have Morgan leaving and coming back maybe in clear or maybe even from the time that we don't see him anymore after Clear until he basically finds the group again and comes to Alexandria. So this could either be a prequel to Morgan's backstory or part of Morgan's backstory in terms of him going away and then coming back. So in my opinion, in terms of the timeline aspect of it, it's going to be very difficult for them to pull it off, and it's going to be a stretch in terms of whether it's going to work out in the timeline or not. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for Morgan to end up being where Fear the Walking Dead is in terms of story and location, and also be where he needs to be in the Walking Dead timeline. So it's going to be very weird how they're going to make that work out. And one thing I want to mention, when this was revealed last night, Lenny James, who plays Morgan, basically connected via satellite and revealed that he's going to be this crossover character. And he basically mentioned that he just finished shooting The Walking Dead's original just the week before. So that would be the end of season 8. And he said that he's going to start shooting Fear the Walking Dead that morning, which would be today. So they're definitely going to be shooting pretty soon as well. So this is definitely going to be in the first half of season 4. And also the way he announced it was extremely odd, because he said that he said his goodbyes to the Walking Dead cast and crew, and basically he shared his experience and his journey as Morgan Jones. And it seemed like he got a bit emotional during some instances as well. And he made it seem like Morgan is going to be transitioning into a Fear the Walking Dead character. And Lenny James himself is going to become the new permanent cast member of Fear the Walking Dead, instead of making like a quick cameo or maybe being there for a few episodes. So that's a bit odd, because if he said his goodbyes like that and everything, that means that he's not going to be coming back to The Walking Dead. If he's just making a quick cameo or be there for a few episodes, that doesn't stop him from coming back to The Walking Dead's original show when it comes back for season 9. So he could have in some way spoiled his death in season 8, unintentionally, but I think that's what ended up happening. So this kind of does support that theory that Morgan will be killed off in season 8. So Lenny James might have unknowingly and unintentionally spoiled his own death in the show, most likely the back half. And it's also weird because when Chris Hardwick was reading some quote from Scott Gimple about Morgan having more story to be told in the rest of season 8 and beyond, we had Lenny James's facial expressions kind of change a little bit. So that was a bit weird. I don't know whether it was coincidental, but it definitely felt weird. And it seems like there's definitely something there in terms of whether Morgan is going to survive All Out War in season 8 or not. But in terms of this announcement goes, I was definitely surprised and shocked. And it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to actually make this work. I'm either going to love it or hate it. If they do it right, I'm going to enjoy it, but if they butcher it, I'm probably going to hate it. And by butcher, I mean mess up the timeline in a way and make it not seem realistic. And I think who better to take on this role than Lenny James? Because Lenny James is a great actor, and I feel like this is a great addition to the Fear the Walking Dead cast. And another thing I want to mention is that this shows that the writers at Fear the Walking Dead, or the producers, were beginning to wonder and question whether Fear the Walking Dead is going to be successful, because they obviously noticed that Fear the Walking Dead was struggling and some things needed to change, and that Fear is not connecting with fans, and fans aren't loving it as much as they should be loving it, or as much as they could be loving it. So what I believe ended up happening was that they said, who can we bring from The Walking Dead to Fear the Walking Dead to not only bring that fan base over, but also make the show more interesting for people? And that's when they went with Lenny James. Because as I said, not only is he a great actor, but also he's a fan favorite. People find his storyline and his character very interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see how Morgan fits in the world of Fear the Walking Dead and how he's going to transition over. But my final thoughts are that it's definitely interesting and shocking, but I'm very excited to see how it's going to work out and how much it's going to impact the quality of Fear the Walking Dead. And one other thing I want to mention as a side note here is that this kind of connects to something we've been talking about in the past as well, which connects to the whole theory with the storyline from the comics coming in to the show in a different way. And this crossover having a lot to do with that storyline from the comics. This story that's going to be coming up with the Whispers. And for comic readers, you know that group. But for non-comic readers, you have no idea who that is. So if you go back and listen to what Morgan says in clear that episode, he said that he saw dead people wearing dead people's faces or something along those lines. And that does kind of hint that that's the group he was talking about. I don't want to spoil too much here for those of you that don't follow the comics. But it's going to be very interesting to see whether that has anything to do with this crossover or not. In terms of the timeline aspect of things and the location aspect of things, it just does not make sense, but it's just something that I wanted to put out there. But whatever the case is, whatever this crossover is, it's definitely going to be some sort of backstory for Morgan. That's the only logical way for it to go. Other than that, I don't think it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for Morgan to leave The Walking Dead and come into Fear the Walking Dead in a timeline that is after All Out War or anything like that. So it's unlikely we're gonna see some sort of crazy time jump in Fear the Walking Dead. So I want to know everybody's opinions about this crossover character being revealed. What do you think about Morgan being this crossover character? Do you agree with it or do you not agree with it? And how do you think it's going to work out? And do you think his transition into Fear the Walking Dead is going to impact the quality of Fear the Walking Dead? That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.